Good evening, everyone. At this time, I would like to call the Bowie regular City Council meeting to order for Monday, May 16th, 2022. It is now 8:02 p.m. And at this time, would everybody please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, for the record, could you confirm that we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor, you do have a quorum. There's 5 council members in attendance.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to ask if there are any agenda additions, deletions, or amendments from the council members. Hearing none, we will move on to citizen participation. Madam Clerk, do we have the list? Thank you. First, we have Mr. Jeffrey Cooper.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Good evening, sir.
Just wanted to say thank you on the progress that we're making on this mortgage foreclosure issue in the city of Bowie. Glad to see that it's on the agenda, and we look forward to getting some results and meeting with all the stakeholders involved. So thank you for your efforts and look forward to June 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Karen Williamson.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening, Councilman. How are you all? And Bowie City staff. Again, I said I was going to come back with something very positive, so I said I want to say thank you, just as Mr. Cooper just did, that I saw that on June 6th, we're going to have a hearing about the housing issue and squatters involved in it. So I want to thank all of you for everything you've done to get it to this point. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to presentations, and we will hear our Youth Council monthly report. We saw that.
Good evening, Mayor Adams, council members, and constituents. As you know, I am the chairman, Shalimar Griffiths Johnson of the Bowie Youth Council, and I hope everyone's doing well this evening. On behalf of my fellow members of the Bowie Youth Council, I will be presenting an update on what we have accomplished this past month. Today, I would like to share with the city of our findings of the first ever Youth Town Hall. Again, special thanks to Mayor Adams for attending and the council members that were able to support our event. Mayor Pro Tem Boafo, council members Ndebumadu, Steve, Harrison. There was a reporter present from the app. There was also a reporter present. For those watching, you can copy the live event from the City of Bowie YouTube channel titled Youth Town Hall. From the event, we did a great job and we got a lot of positive feedback. I would like to take this time to share them with you. The youth in attendance shared that they would like to see more town halls happening with youth and with youth more frequently, perhaps quarterly, or to keep a pulse on the youth. It was also suggested that we actually go out to Bowie schools and talk to students. The youth enjoyed our guest artist Fly Zaya. The attendance was pretty good considering it was our first event also. There is a great concern surrounding the topic of truancy. Chief Nesky was there to lead us in conversation. We would like to discuss this further and see what changes that can be implemented in order to support these students. This This then led into the conversation with Miss Wendy Wilcox on mental health. There was a lot of conversation surrounding mental health coming out of COVID-19 and being in isolation for almost 2 years. The youth of Bowie would like to see more activities that are geared towards young adult mental health. One resident even shared that they would like more protected free time to decompress from the stresses of school. They shared not feeling supported enough with mental health in schools and being expected to just continue to deal with it. This is an area very sensitive to the Youth Council. Many struggle with mental health issues, whether it's managing home life, school stressors, or being overwhelmed. We would really like to see more support that is more attainable to the youth. In terms of more activities, some ideas shared were youth game nights, coming up with innovative events that have not been hosted with youth before. Another concern raised in our town hall surrounds the problem of classroom density in the schools that Bowie residents attend. This is an ongoing issue with our county schools, and we're asking our officials what we can do about it in Bowie. Next request from the youth was having more STEM-related opportunities outside of school for Bowie residents. Councilmember Ndebumadu shared that there's a new opportunity. I wanted to make sure to mention it here today for those watching. It is an online job program that was recently launched, a partnership with Coursera, listed in the City of Bowie website under online job trainings, where you can apply to get a Coursera license. You will then have access to over 5,000 courses where you can access STEM learning as well. So thank you for that, Ms. Ndebumadu. Also on the list was seen to get more green clubs outside of schools and to be more organized with sports for the youth. The topic of solutions surrounding trash on the roads in Bowie became a hot topic. Where we have no control, I wanted to bring that to you guys' attention. Some of the youth were interested in jobs for 13-year-olds looking for a place to find those jobs in our city. So maybe a city-run database where they can be directed to available jobs. Lastly, as mentioned before, we would like to take an opportunity to further mentorship the City Youth Council. Maybe a shadow day or even planned, or an event planned where we have more government leadership exposure. Moving on to our upcoming events, the next order of business for the Bowie Youth Council is to establish a Bowie Youth Council bylaws subcommittee to create and establish bylaws for the Youth Council operations. And also our last meeting for the term is coming up on June 2nd, 2022. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Maya. Good job. And I would just like to take a moment to thank our Youth Council, all of the council members. I'd also like to thank Councilwoman Harrison for all her support and liaison.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say just a couple of words. Shelamaya is definitely a role model for youth. He's done a phenomenal job as chair of the Bowie Youth Council, so poised and so effective, and he's just going to be, he's going on to be a phenomenal leader, but they all are. Every member of the Youth Council is just wonderful. I see you out there. And just such brilliant young people. And I see them really, really making a difference in the community. So when you see them, please encourage them. I just thank them for this year, for the inaugural Youth Council. I'm so very proud of them, and I look forward to working with them in the future. Just thank you so much.
All right. We will now move on the agenda to the Arts and Education Scholarship recipients. if we could have, I think, Ms. Gabrielle Davidson to come forward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Gabrielle Davison. I'm here on behalf of the Arts Committee. The Arts Committee has met and selected Joshua Kruchowski to receive the 2022 Arts Scholarship. Joshua is a senior at DeMatha Catholic High School. He has a 4.12 GPA and will major in music performance in the fall at Peabody Conservatory. His instrument is the trumpet. Joshua will receive a scholarship award in the amount of $1,000. And if I can have Joshua come up, I will present him.
Congratulations, Joshua. We will next have Ms. LaDonna King come forward to present the education scholarships on behalf of the Education Committee.
Good evening. I'm LaDonna King. I am the Vice Chair of the Education Committee. The Education Committee did meet and selected Corey Bast, Alexis Denny, Sabrina Lussener, and Jacqueline Wells to receive the 2022 Excellence in Education Scholarship. Corey Best is a senior at Eleanor Roosevelt High School. Corey has a 4.341 GPA and will major in journalism at the University of Maryland or Harvard in the fall. Alexis Denny is a senior at Bowie High School. Alexis has a 4.01 GPA and will attend the University of Maryland College Park and major in pre-nursing. Sabrina Lusner is a senior at Our Lady of Good Counsel High School. Sabrina has a GPA of 3.91. Sabrina will attend Syracuse University in the fall and will study sociology and anthropology. Jacqueline Wells is a senior at Bowie High School. Jacqueline has a 4.1 GPA and will be the first generation college student in her family and is dedicated to community service. Each student will receive a scholarship and an award of $1,250. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, Corey? Yes. Congratulations. Cool. And Alexis? Jacqueline? Congratulations.
With the scholarship,
Congratulations.
Arts Committee as well. Okay. Why don't we just meet on this side right over here? Here we go. Everybody come on to, please, the committee. Members, Sudan also, please. Representative committee from the house. Why don't we slide a little to the right? My right, your left.
Stage left. Stage
Let
left.
us slide this and we're going to block.
Congratulations.
Again, a little bit more that way.
We're gonna have to squeeze on a lot more.
Slide this way.
Yeah, one more stack. Yeah.
There we go. I think we'll do good. Come on up, we'll do it. Take your hand. We can make this happen, right? The presenter of the Arts Committee is. Oh, there you go. All right, Steve. Thank you all so very much. And congratulations. Again, I say congratulations to all of our award recipients, and speaking on behalf of not just the council, but staff and the city as a whole, we are all so very proud of you. So thank you again. One more client, please. Okay, we will now be moving on to the city boards and committees. We have appointments. Council concurred to appoint the following members to their respective committees for a 2-year term. And I ask that you please move to appoint them. As for Community Recreation Committee, Ms. Linda Bailey, and for the Green Team Executive Committee, Mr. Michael Lagua.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve Linda Bailey to the Community Recreation Committee.
Second. It's been moved and properly seconded. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor, please respond with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries.
Yeah, you want the green team?
Yeah. Green team is Michael Lagua.
All righty. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that Mr. Michael Lagua be appointed to the Green Team Executive Committee.
Second.
It's been moved improperly. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. I would like to ask if they are here or online that we do our constitutional oath. Please come forward and raise your right hand. And when I say state, just state your names, and then we'll get to the part where you state your committees, okay? So I state your name.
I, Linda Bailey,
I'm Mike Lagua.
Do swear or affirm
do swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
to the state of Maryland
to the state of Maryland,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of or alternate member of, and state your committee,
execute the office and/or, hold on, I lost
just the office of, and state the committee.
Recreation Committee,
Execute the office of Green Team Executive Committee.
According to the Constitution
according to the Constitution
and the laws of this state.
and the laws of this state.
Congratulations and welcome. Thank you. Here you go. You have to come and get your certificate. Here we go. Please, come on up. There you go. Congratulations. Thank you so very much for being willing to serve. Ms. Dinda and Michael, here you go. Thank you. Appreciate your service. And if you don't mind, you stay right here and just get a photo. We could get a photo. Somebody could get a photo for us, please. Okay, rather than going down. Here we go. Close in a little bit. Okay. Here we go, team.
1, 2.
Again, congratulations. And I would like to again state on behalf of the council, the staff, and the city as a whole, thank you for your willingness to serve our community. Okay, at this time, we will now be moving on to the council announcements, and I will start that off if you don't mind. We witnessed this weekend a lot of hate crimes and a lot of violence. We also know that there's still a lot going on in Ukraine. We know that we've crossed that 1 million lives lost to COVID. And I'd like for us, if we would, just pause and take a moment to think about those things and keep them in our thoughts. Hey, thank you. I would also like to offer a speedy recovery to our junior senator from the state of Maryland, that being Senator Chris Van Hollen, and we wish him a true speedy recovery and complete recovery. Having said that, one last thing I'd like to do is a positive note, and I'd like to congratulate the teacher from Tasker Middle School for being named the Prince George's County Teacher of the Year. So we do want to offer our congratulations on that and make sure that we keep her in mind, and Madam City Clerk, we'll do a proclamation for her.
Yes, sir.
At the next meeting, we'll move forward with that. I'm sorry, I took a moment here doing those things. I'd like to open it up to any other council members for any announcements at this time. Hearing none, well, I will do one more, and I would ask if someone from the city could remind everyone about our Memorial Day parade that's going to be coming up. Who's going to jump right in there for us?
Mr. Mayor, it's scheduled for the Saturday before Memorial Day, and we're going to do it like we've always done it. It's going to be a big parade, lots of participants. We're going to have vendors out there, and all we need is good weather. I figure if you're, since you're a divine entity, you do that for us, right?
All right.
If you can get us the weather, we'll be all right.
Yes, and so I do ask all of the citizens and residents to really take a look at the parade. Remember why we're doing this. For all those who have really made it possible for us to enjoy the freedoms we have. So I look forward to a great turnout from everyone and a chance for us to get back together again. So I look forward to that. Having said that, I think I'm going to stop with my announcements for today. Any other announcements? Okay. Hearing none. At this time, we will now move on to the city manager's report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a report. I'd like to thank everybody who went through the budget process, who got us to the point where we can, you all can take and vote and hopefully approve the FY 2024 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we will now move to the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second to accept the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, at this time I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. We will now move on to the old business, the fiscal year 2023 budget ordinance and capital improvements program, and the adoption of the fiscal year 2023 budget and CIP.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, as I said earlier, we've done a lot of work for the FY 2023 budget, and that's before you. And we've looked at all of the line items and reviewed all the significant issues in the budget, and we believe that it's ready for approval at the leisure of the council. And I would hope that we can get a motion and move forward with that right now.
Okay, I will entertain a motion at this
Mr.
time.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we
Mr.
approve...
Mayor?
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve Budget Ordinance 0-1-22 and the Capital Improvement Program, Resolution R12-22.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept the budget as proposed. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries.
Hoorah, way to go.
All right. To the council and to the staff, thank you so very much for all of your hard work. All right, we will now move to the new business, and that is the economic strategy presentation and briefing. Mr. King?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, I'm John Henry King, the Economic Development Director. It hardly seems like it's been as long as it has since we started this, but it was this time a year ago when the idea and the need for an economic development strategy was advanced by Council. We entered into a contract with our advisory team in September last year. They presented an in-progress briefing to you in January, and we have received the final draft. We received it in April. The draft has been posted since April to the city's website to allow for the public to read it and prepare for any comments they might have. Tonight, you're going to receive a briefing from our consulting team. You will then have an opportunity to hear from those citizens who've chosen to participate in a public hearing tonight, and staff is recommending that you accept this strategy and refer it to the Economic Development Committee to make suggestions back to you for its implementation. I would like to introduce to you tonight the two principal consultants on our team, Dr. Richard Clinch from the University of Baltimore's Jacob France Institute, and Bill Cole, a partner in Margrave Strategies. Dr. Clinch will begin tonight. Richard, it's yours. Step on up on the...
Please join us at the mic. You might need to lift it up a little bit to hear the mic.
So the agenda for tonight is team introductions, kind of giving you a briefing of how we got here. Then we're really going to dive into the strategic plan because we briefed you in January, as John said, on the data that went into it. So today we're really going to be focusing in on the strategy itself and then hopefully answering the questions from you. So in terms of introducing the team, the Jacob France Institute is the sponsored research unit of the Merrick School of Business at University of Baltimore. We also wrote the city strategy about 20 years ago. We've teamed with Margrave Partners, who do place-based economic development, including working with City of Bowie and the Bowie State University. So the process took about 6 to 9 months. We started in September. Task one was the baseline assessment of the county's economy, which we presented, or the city's economy, which we presented to you in November to the Economic Development Department. We engaged stakeholders through a series of meetings and interviews and stakeholder engagement sessions. We prepared a SWOT analysis, and that informed the development of the strategy, which we're presenting here tonight. So in terms of the strategy, we focused it in on 12 recommendations in 4 core areas. In terms of, the first one is creative placemaking, so building places that are attractive to people and businesses. Second core area of recommendations is leveraging Bowie State University as a core anchor for the city and area. Then with all the development going on in the city and surrounding areas, athletic recreation seems to be an area that's rising out as a core area of opportunity for the city to capitalize on. And then finally, the core part of the economic development strategy in terms of expanding the city's business base through attraction, startup, retention of businesses. So we have 12 recommendations in each of these areas. I'm now going to pass it over to Bill. who's going to go into each of the recommendations.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you very much. It is an honor to be here this evening. We've enjoyed working with all of you on this process, and thank you for making your time available to get feedback from as we were doing our interviews. My name is Bill Cole. I'm a partner at Margrave Strategies. I'm also a recovering elected official, so I bring a unique perspective to this process, having served in the Maryland General Assembly and 2 terms on the Baltimore City Council. In addition, I spent 5 years as the president and CEO of the Baltimore Development Corporation, the City of Baltimore's economic development arm. So I take all of those skills and bring them together on a project like this. And we've enjoyed, my team has certainly enjoyed working with JFI and Dr. Clinch. So we're going to get into it. I'm going to turn it over very briefly here to Jordan Montoya and Katie Gerbus from the Margrave team. But we went through a process when we were coming up with these recommendations. And you'll see a matrix that has recommended actions with the implementer or the leader of each action, the partners that you would need to identify or join, and then the budget impact. Doing these types of economic development strategies also requires you to very carefully consider the pros and cons of investing in such a strategy, and then the time frame. What's the low-hanging fruit? What takes longer? What's a longer-term investment? And then how it fits the key goals of the RFP. We followed the guidelines in the RFP to determine whether or not the recommendation fit within those guidelines, and then any notes on that. With that, I will turn it over to Jordan and Katie to walk you through the recommendations, and when they're done, we'll be available for questions.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jordan Montoya with Margrave Strategies. Like Bill mentioned, we have 4 strategic areas of focus. That's what you see with the numbers, so I'm just trying to orient you guys on the page. We also have some recommended actions that fall in those buckets or the recommended strategic areas of focus. So for this specific area of focus, we're going to have 6 recommended actions where it'll be different for the others. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off here. The first strategic area of focus is to utilize creative placemaking to support economic development with an initial focus on the Bowie Town Center. First and foremost, just to kind of situate us, Bowie Town Center was one of the #1 things brought up by all stakeholder groups. There is certainly a perception of the Bowie Town Center, and I'll kind of get into that, but I really want to talk about what placemaking is. So placemaking is that feeling that there is a there. It's that feeling that once you've arrived, you understand the boundaries, but it's a way to plan and make sure that there's a lot of connection, walkability, bikeability. There's a lot of ways to achieve this. Now, we know that the city of Bowie is a bedroom community. That means that we have folks that are residing here, but they more likely than not are leaving the city to work elsewhere. They're commuting back and forth, but that does not mean that when they're home, they want to commute to their experiences and their amenities. So what we've found is that they want to make sure that there's a sense of place when we're in Bowie. So the reason that we're saying Bowie Town Center is the logical first step and initial part of this placemaking endeavor is because it has the bones. It is situated right next to City Council. You plug in Bowie on your GPS and it might likely pull up Bowie Town Center, and people kind of know the name. It also has Town Center right in the title. So because of the infrastructure, because it's consistently brought up by stakeholders, and because it really has the boundaries, this is where we see the most effective use of placemaking right now, and just an initial step for these recommended actions. Now, don't get me wrong, all of these recommended actions can be put in other areas. We know there's Old Town Bowie, there's other development areas, and you could take these recommended actions and place them there. We're just saying that this might have the biggest impact to start you off, to start in Bowie Town Center. So getting into the recommended action #1, actively market and support retail and encourage high quality development. So I know a lot of the onus goes on the private development corporation that is running Bowie Town Center. However, they are nearly 100% occupied at Bowie Town Center. So they see that as a very viable asset. What I want to make sure that is clear is that the city can step up in other ways in order to curate the retailers and the commercial businesses that go into that by simply making connections, by getting involved, going to the trade shows, making sure that the council is saying, hi, we want this specific retailer, and we're going to go after them to attract them, entertain them, and you have the power to do that. So this is why we're encouraging that marketing. You have all the data points. You know that there is definitely a misalignment between the quality of retail that's in the town center and the socioeconomic makeup of the city. So not to mention, more times than not, when people are talking about City of Bowie, they know that there could be good shopping here, but it's been cannibalized maybe by some of the new developments, and that's just a shiny thing, but the bones are here in Bowie Town Center. So with that, the lead would be council and staff, and then partnering with Washington Prime Group. They would, this is a big step to make sure the public and private sectors are kind of partnering up, and I think it could be a nice long-term goal. Recommended action number 2 is to continue to support mixed-use development in key areas of the city as a tool to encourage placemaking, vibrancy, and well-planned, I'm going to pause there, density. So mixed-use communities, they provide that engaging live, work, play, and learn kind of ecosystem. So we know that millennials, Gen Xers, Gen Zers, they all want to go somewhere where that they can more or less be doing their shopping, but also walking upstairs to their apartment and maybe coming back and down several times. It's all about the connection and the ecosystem. As we talked about in our data points, Bowie is an aging community. In order to make sure that we are preparing for, younger families and trying to attract them to make sure that they keep Bowie great, then we're gonna wanna make sure that we're, not necessarily going after only the people who can afford a single family home, but maybe they wanna start in a condo or an apartment. And through that, you could do 2 of the major things that the RFP asked for, which is diversify the retail type, the residential type, but also make sure that we are taking the tax burden off only single family homeowners. So this can kind of spread out that and make sure we're supporting it. So we are coming to the council and we're saying, as long as you're supporting mixed use development and you're not halting it, as well as it's well planned and the density makes sense, then you're gonna have a win. Now, also with mixed use, you're more or less gonna find that walkability connection. The planning department here does a great job. And by making sure that you're in on the ground floor with those plans to make sure that all the connections are there, the sidewalks, all the landscaping makes sense and people can bike and walk to different areas, then you're hitting all the smart points. So that we just wanna make sure that you continue to support mixed use because it really does hit a lot of those levers that the city was asking for in the RFP. Recommended action number 3 is to create a retail attraction fund. So you'll see we have $3 signs on this budget number. So it does mean that it would be putting aside and looking into different ways to bring some capital and create a fund. But this could be one of those tools in the toolbox that really plays to the marketing aspect. This could be the carrot for that big retailer that all your constituents have been asking for. We know there's those fancy grocery stores that everybody kind of wants, and there's those big retailers that everyone's seeking that really don't come unless there's some incentive for them. By creating this attraction fund, you could start to put that money away, so in time, you have the money to say, hey, we'll pay for a certain portion of your tenant improvement costs. We'll help you with your relocation fees. We'll help you with your marketing and your demographics and your data. This is very important, and it could be done in different zones. So you could have a jurisdiction that is just for the town center. You can make it an attraction fund for Old Town Bowie and just put the money aside, and when you finally find that, commercial entity or that retailer that you just gotta have, you'll have some money to help entice them. This is another tool in the toolbox. This is to implement a commercial facade improvement program. I have got good news for you guys. DHCD already has ideas and funds and different ways to seed this kind of program. So an FIP is a great way to get a grant so that the public realm is improved. So essentially what we're asking is that, you put a fund together, different types of businesses of all size, it would be up to you to make those requirements, could apply for them. They get their paint fixed up. Maybe they add lighting. Maybe they, do a different logo on the outside. Maybe they increase the landscaping. It's just a great way to show that the public realm is looking out for their business owners, and it also beautifies the area. Next recommended action is to work with county officials to streamline processes for permits, inspections, and enforcement. So Bowie Town Center was number 1. Number 2 was county level DPI. City of Bowie is the largest municipality. I told you I was going to do that. Municipality in Prince George's County. There's a lot of power here. There is a lot of respect for City of Bowie. And we feel that because this comes up over and over with all different types of stakeholders, we could not ignore it. You do not want anyone to be dissuaded from doing business in Prince George's County or in the City of Bowie just because of a slow permit process. So our recommendation is open up that door. Find a way to maybe start a work group where we talk about going into writing a letter. Like, get the word out there that the City of Bowie is there to help the county, and use some of that bandwidth, I don't know who has any, but if they did, to maybe start to talk about this. Because what we want is we want those people that are willing to invest in City of Bowie to know that you understand the issues. Also, you know, even for the little guy, the person that just wants to put a deck on their back of their house or like get a shed going, it really shouldn't take as long as it's kind of come down to. So we just wanted to point that out and make sure that the stakeholders knew that they were heard. Recommended action number 6 is to complete an assessment of property in Old Town Bowie and create an area designated for small and local businesses. So I will show you that there is $1 sign here. However, this is just for the assessment part. This is going to be one of those midterm, long-term goals that I really want you guys to think about. So we kind of get into conducting an assessment. You might hear this as a property scan. We are doing a block-by-block analysis in downtown Baltimore where we literally have graduate students walking block to block, property to property, looking at the aesthetic of the property. How does it seem like it's being used? What's the actual use on the door? Who's the owner? And they're just giving us a real-time feedback of how it feels and what it's like. By doing this and going back to, you know, looking at where the boundaries are, we might be able to make some decisions about future acquisition. Maybe there's some uses or zoning that might want to be adjusted, but this might mean that there should be some sort of acquiring from the city to try to spur that development in Old Town Bowie. We know that that's a priority of yours. We know that it's important to you. So that's kind of the vision, especially since it's such a cute area. We think something a little smaller scale, boutiques, maker space, that could be a really great place to lead, but it might mean the City of Bowie has to make some sort of money interest to be able to show that that you guys are ready to see some change there. And I am going to kick it over to Katie to take you through the other areas of focus.
All right, so Jordan ran through the first half of our recommended actions, with all coincidentally just happen to fall into one strategic area of focus. We're going to take you through the remaining 6, which fall equally among 3 other areas of focus. So the first is to leverage Bowie State University to benefit the city. I know, you all know, that the institution is not within city limits. However, most lay people don't realize that. They hear the name City of Bowie, they hear Bowie State University, and they assume that they're connected, that one is located within the other. And there's really a relatively small number of people who realize that there's a political boundary there, and that political boundary makes a difference, right? Certain tools and resources can't be used outside of our municipal limits. That said, there are ways we can engage with the university to leverage it for the city's benefit. One of those ways, we're going to encourage you to continue funding the Bowie Business Innovation Center. It's a great program. It provides resources to small business accelerators, startup programs all throughout the county. However, let's make sure that the City of Bowie is getting the most bang for their buck out of that. The BIC offers programs to anyone in Prince George's County, even if that person does not live in Bowie, even if that business is not registered and located in the City of Bowie. So let's find a way to take those businesses who are already coming to this area to use the BIC's programming, the programming that the city largely funds, and let's keep them in the City of Bowie. So let's connect them to local landlords and property brokers. So when it's time for them to move out of their house and actually start hiring employees, they have space right here in the city that they can do it. And that way the city gets some of that economic benefit that we've spent the time and energy and dollars, frankly, investing into the program, even though right now we're not always seeing all of the benefits from that.
The next recommended action is to develop a Live Where You Work program. This program and these ideas are not new. They've been practiced elsewhere in the county, in the state, in the region. But really the goal here is to create a fund that can be used for down payment and closing cost assistance for eligible employees to purchase a home within a certain geographic area. What we're suggesting here is creating a program with Bowie State University where their nearly 1,000 faculty and staff would be incentivized to purchase a home within city limits. The question anytime I talk about Live Where You Work is, well, who pays for that? Where does the money come from? Jordan alluded to DHCD's community legacy funding before. City of College Park uses community legacy dollars to run their Live Where You Work program. The way it's organized in College Park is the University of Maryland actually pitches into that fund too. So we've created a pot of money that we can draw down on to support those employees buying homes in the community. We're talking about it in relation to Bowie State University, but it doesn't have to be just Bowie State University. This could be something that the city might want to invest in for its own employees so their employees can live where they work. This might be something that a Nova Line could be interested in, or a new company interested in looking at the city. That's a really powerful recruiting tool and HR tool. It's expensive to live in the DC region. This lowers that barrier to entry just a little bit. Moving into strategic action area number 3, leaning into the strengths that the city has when it comes to athletics and recreation. I know that this has come up before. I know there have been previous discussions about recreational facilities in the city, and do we want to keep them local? Do we want to open them up and have a more regional draw? But this is something that, upon looking at it, really stood out to us. I think the recreation facilities in the city, whether they're city-owned, park and planning, the trail system, the nearby Patuxent Wildlife Refuge. This is in an Anacostia Trails heritage area. The whole point of that system and that program is to encourage recreational tourism. That is like the gem of the city of Bowie. It came up in our independent analysis. It came up in a ton of stakeholder meetings. So let's really lean into that and find ways that we can drive economic growth out of these already existing athletic and recreational tourism opportunities. So how can we do that? Lean in to what's already here. As new developments such as Liberty Sports Park come online, make sure we're tapping into that and promoting the city. This could be developing new materials by the city focused on recreation and wellness. This could also be just amplifying what's already there, whether the city created it or whether some of these sports and recreation groups have created it. Let's amplify that message. Let's make sure people who are coming to the city for the recreation know what else the city has to offer. Maybe they're coming because they're going to bike up and down on the trail on a beautiful weekend. Well, let's make sure they know about some of the restaurants that might be along the way or other destinations in the city so they can spend their dollars here as well. And finally, we also want to make sure we're taking advantage of utilization of our rec facilities when they're not being used. A great example is the Bowie Baysox Stadium. It's a massive facility. They only have so many home games there a year. So let's use that space when there's not a home game for an outdoor concert, for a movie night, for a farmer's market. This idea actually came to us from the general manager of the Baysox. They were like, we would love to get more engaged with this community. We have the space, we'll give it. We would love to host some of these events. So let's really lean into that and use that not only to create a greater place, but also to have those economic benefits as well. And our other action here under recreation, good news is already underway. I think later this evening you'll be having a discussion about the Bowie Racetrack Property Steering Committee and the charge for that group. Jordan and I have been involved in that. We've worked with Councilmember Harrison and Mayor Adams for the past couple weeks. Really excited that that's launching, and we're going to continue to advocate for support of development of that area. What that area looks like, that's still to be determined, right? That's a community-driven process. We need to figure out what the local community, the adjacent property owners want, what you as elected officials want to see in that land. But let's be thinking proactively about this space so when it does come into city ownership, we're ready to hit the ground running. We know what resources we have. We know what we need to tap into. And finally, our fourth area of focus is really around business attraction, expansion, and retention efforts. The city has a lower job per resident amount than any of its peer municipalities. That's not really surprising for a bedroom community. That's the definition of a bedroom community. However, a critical element of this RFP, and the reason why we're here in front of you today, is wanting to reduce that burden on single-family residential property tax owners. So commercial properties are going to do that. Typically, commercial properties require a lower burden on municipal services, but they still contribute to the tax rolls in a great way, so it's kind of a win-win for the city. The key here with this action is really the expansion of high-quality jobs. A few specific sectors that, in looking at the analysis of the city, we think you're really poised to be a leader in are information technology, government contracting, health services, and destination retail as well. A couple different ways that you can do that, certainly through additional marketing and networking efforts, really acting as our own brokers for this community to make sure folks know what exists, the talent that exists with our residents already in the city. But there are other more creative ways we can do. One is to tap into leadership that we know lives in the Bowie to Annapolis corridor of major corporations and get them to move their office to Bowie. It's not unheard of. It's happened before. That was a major element in Novalon coming into this area because the CEO lived in Annapolis, didn't want to drive into DC every day for work. Especially as we're at this kind of inflection point in our working environment. Are people going hybrid? Are people remote? Are people back in person? Now is really where we're seeing the office market change. We're seeing the demands and desires of employees change. This is a great time for us to jump on that, try to fill some of the office vacancy that exists within the city of Bowie and bring new businesses in. And finally, our last recommended action this evening, it's time to brag about what we've accomplished so far. The city has a lot of programs, resources, and tools that exist, but a recurring theme, this was actually an explicit question that we asked our stakeholder interviews, and I think 2 people out of the 40-ish that we interviewed could name a single program or tool that existed. So we have them, people don't know about them. Let's make sure that we shout it from the rooftops and people know what exists, what they might have access to. Things as simple as making announcements at council meetings, social media blasts, putting it in the Bowie Brief, perhaps changing how the website, how you get to some of these resources on the city's website. Easy, quick, not inexpensive ways that we can make sure folks know all the great things that already exist here.
I do want to, before we get to question and answer, just say one thing. You know, we did a lot of stakeholder interviews and we certainly enjoyed the process. People genuinely like the city of Bowie. I mean, we really did get a lot of that. But I think it's important when you do a deep dive like this, sometimes you sit there and you hear all these recommendations and it seems critical. People celebrated being in the city of Bowie. The question is, what can we do, what can you do to help it even become more welcoming and more of a destination for businesses and people? But we did hear a lot of really good stuff, and I just wanted to make that point before we finish tonight, because people do really like the city of Bowie. So thank you very much for the opportunity. We really have enjoyed this engagement, and we hope to be able to help you down the line. Thanks.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Well, first off, Jordan, Katie, Ken, Bill, Logan, you guys know how important this project was to me. I think city staff and my colleagues know how important this was to me. So thank you guys for getting this done. I know we didn't get it in the time frame that I would have liked, but the world isn't perfect, and I think our residents are going to be happy with the product you put together. First thing I have to say is John Henry King, I think, are we celebrating 21 or 22 years in the city of Bowie? Where are we at now? This week?
I'm entering my 21st year. My
21st year.
I first came here in 2001, and my first meeting was budget approval night with the then sitting council.
Well, thank you for 21 years. Can we give him a round of applause, please? I think that's It's been 20 years since we've gotten this study done. And I'm really proud of what we're going to do. But I have a billion questions. The first, though, is a process matter for my colleagues. I've spoken to some of you guys about this. But given the length of this project, how long it took, my ask is that there's some consensus on us not moving forward and sending it to the Economic Development Committee just yet, that we allow some residents some time to breathe with this document, to ask some more questions, and then during our second meeting in June, we then move forward to have it to the Economic Development Committee. Do folks
Mr.
concur with that?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, there are some individuals signed up for the public hearing portion tonight.
Yeah.
So I think they have cogent, relevant comment to add to the discussion.
And we will get to that.
Yeah, and that's great. We'll get to that first. By matter of process, do we need to do public hearing first, or are we able to go into questions?
We can do the public questions, our questions and all first.
And then public.
Then I'll open the public hearing.
Sounds good.
And then we'll close that, and then we'll go back to.
Sounds good. Thanks. A couple questions, and again, this is for anyone who could really answer these for me. The first is about Bowie Town Center, obviously in District 3, but I think all of us feel it's an important part of the city of Bowie. Our current anchors are what, Macy's and the new-to-be mixed-use development that's coming online at some point. With the current state and how town centers are, what have you guys seen cities do, especially given the current state of WPG? What have you seen other municipalities across the region do to really try to engage in a unique way?
Well, first of all, retail has changed a lot in the last 24 months. And it was changing heading into COVID. But retail itself has changed significantly. Big box stores and large retailers have struggled. Online competition and the way people shop has changed. So you got to think a little bit differently about big retail and how it may anchor in the future. One of the things I think Jordan and Katie will point to is the walkability, bikeability, the ease of access. People want to feel safe when they're walking through there. I've noticed when I've driven through several times and walked through, there's a lot of stop signs, feels a little bit unsafe as you're crossing intersections. You want people to spend a whole day there, we need to make certain that we make it safer. And that means slowing down traffic. That means perhaps getting rid of some of those drive lanes and creating more pedestrian access, rethinking the layout to ensure that people and pedestrians feel safe. Did I miss anything? And that's a lot of what we see. It really is the street level appeal for pedestrians.
Great. Thank you.
And programming, activities there.
On the second action point, specifically on the partner side, and maybe you kind of mean this when you say the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning, or I'm not sure if you do, but obviously most folks know as this body only has recommendation power when it comes to residential units coming in and out of the city, and pretty much any development outside the land that we actually own. I'm curious as to why you guys didn't put the county council as a partner, sitting as district council as a partner in this, right? Because they are going to be, frankly, the decision makers at the end of the day when it comes to all the development that happens moving forward.
I think that's a totally fair critique, and we can absolutely add it. They were omitted because in an ideal world, there's not the appeal process that brings it up to the district council. In an ideal level, the planning board's able to handle it. Consensus is reached long in advance. Community is supportive of a project, but you're right. If it does get to that point, they're absolutely a factor.
And the second thing, and it may be in the larger document, and I only got one chance to read through it, so forgive me.
It's a big document.
We didn't make a big mention about redevelopment, right? We have a lot of aging facilities, a lot of aging town centers within the city of Bowie. Is there anything that you guys saw throughout your study that talks about redevelopment in specific?
I mean, we could have added a number of additional recommendations. We tried to keep it to what was immediately in front of us. I know Richard, when he was doing his economic analysis, we did see opportunities there. It's certainly something that I think you need to keep on the radar screen, but there was enough action. And again, some of the recommendations actually speak to redevelopment. The facade improvement programs, the things like that really can help. It all depends on how much resource you're willing to put in that world, because it's all privately owned.
Yeah. Third, or I don't even know what number I'm on here, but my next question is about the economic development staff and department, right? John Henry King does a phenomenal job, but a lot of this, I assume, is going to take a lot more manpower and probably some cross-agency collaboration. There really wasn't anything in the document about that. Is there any thoughts on what that looks like?
Yeah, I think that's a really good catch. It's hard for us, we were brought in to be third-party eyes and to give you an objective opinion. You, as the elected officials, are responsible for choosing to adopt this document, and then you're also responsible for guiding its implementation. So I think that's a really good point, that as this group and body looks at those things that needs to be taken into consideration. The programs that we've outlined here is not possible for one staff person to do. I think John Henry might have a part-time person helping out from time to time. If you're going to invest in this, you need to invest in the resource all the way through. For example, if a Live Where You Work program, it might not be 100% of one person's time, but it's at least 50 to 75% of a person's time in order to do it well. So that's definitely something that as you're looking at these, looking ahead at budgeting plans and work plans to take into consideration.
Next point here is on Bowie State. I mean, I think, again, everybody, at least on my colleagues, know how I feel about our collaboration or lack thereof with Bowie State University and how we kind of benefit from each other when we are fully engaged. And tonight we'll be taking us first step on creating a task force, but it shouldn't be the end-all be-all, right? They have the Rise Zone application coming up, which I got a tour a few weeks ago, and it's something that we want to be able to support as a city. But my real question here is, and you guys have some experience in this, is the College Park City University Partnerships group, which kind of marries the two together in a real official way. I'm wondering why there wasn't really any recommendation of something like that in this document, right?
We talked about that.
Okay.
We had it in an initial draft and we ended up removing it.
Okay.
I think the main reason, at least how we defended the removal of it to ourselves, is I think it's a little bit premature. That requires dedicated funding sources. It requires a pretty heavy lift to get an organization up and running, go through the process. The CP-CUP, the College Park City University Partnership, works really well in part because it's a nonprofit organization, so it's eligible to receive grants from the state, from the county, from private institutions. It takes a long time to get there. I think if we're looking 5 to 10 years, that's absolutely something that should be on the horizon and should be considered. But right now, I think we make some small starts, get that relationship really going, build it up over time, and then would be the appropriate time to invest in that resource.
Yeah. A question on redundancy, and this kind of falls through the university partnerships thing, right? We have Huntington Development Corporation, we have our own thing happening, we have the incubator. If we had a university partnerships, at some point, do we become too redundant in the amount of things we have happening within the city? Do we have to streamline a little bit? What does that look like? And there really wasn't that much mention, or if any, of Huntington Development Corporation in the document. I'm just curious about that as well.
Yeah, do you want to, you do a lot with community development corporation.
Yeah, we didn't, I mean, we decided that that was, for this type of study, that was a rabbit hole that we didn't necessarily need to go down. Unraveling those relationships can be challenging politically and otherwise, so we didn't think for this document it was the right time. I will say one more thing about Bowie State, and I think you all know that Margrave is working alongside Bowie State on some economic development work. Most communities would salivate at the opportunity to have an anchor like Bowie State. It is a unique resource with a dynamic leadership team, so we can't stress enough the more that the city of Bowie can do, even though it's not, we articulated it well, it's not in the city boundaries, but it's an anchor that is throwing off lots of really young, smart people that are doing great things. The more the city of Bowie can do to embrace that as their anchor, the better I think the community will be long term.
And then 2 last points here, and I promise I won't keep everybody all night. Bowie Bay Sox, I just want to say I'm glad you guys got to speak with Brian Shawcross. He is a very animated and excited person, but that's what the Bowie Bay Sox need. And he's been a good partner to the city, especially during the COVID times. And so anything we can do as a city to support him, we will continue to do. The last thing I'll just say, and this is mainly for the residents who are both watching in TV land and those who are here today, right? Our budget reflects our values and how we move forward and things, right? Tonight we just passed a budget that, from a green standpoint, really said a lot about the investments that we wanted to make as a city. And what I want to encourage all of us to think about, and the residents to think about as we go through this process, and hopefully residents have more time to really process this really lengthy document, is, next year as we head into budget, we should start really thinking about what that looks like, right? And what we have to do as our city finances to make investments early now so we see the effects 5-10 years down the road. So that is it from me. Again, thank you guys. Really great document, and really happy that this got done.
First, just as a point of personal, I'd like to recognize Senator Ron Watson, who has joined us this evening. Who's here. I'd also like to, at this point, address the Bowie BIC. You have that in there, and Bowie State University and the whole thing. I was fortunate enough to be there last week with Senator Cardin and Senator Van Hollen and the president of Bowie State University and members of the Bowie BIC and our own Jesse Buggs and others. And there was a directed funding of $3 million that was given to the Bowie State University, a part of that to expand the Bowie BIC, the accelerator, the 8A accelerator program. So as you talk about trying to capture more of the businesses that are coming through that accelerator program, there was direct funding for $3 million to help to do that. So I think that's a good point that you made there of what we can look to do, and I just wanted to commend Bowie State at this point and the Bowie BIC and the city and for the support of that and how big that can become for us. And so as you point this out, I think that's a point that we can really look at, is bringing and trying to keep those businesses, and particularly with now the funding and the engagement and the expanding of the accelerator program, to keep and try and attract those to the city here. So that's a big start for us in that area. So at this time, I'd like to also turn it over if any of my other colleagues have any questions right now. Councilman Harrison.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And thank you all very much. Great report. I did get a chance to read through and make some notations. I don't really have any questions, but I just kind of have some comments. When you talk about Bowie State University, I want to make sure that we continue to just talk about cultivating, as Mr. Mayor said, entrepreneurship and stressing the minority women-owned businesses. We definitely want to encourage our minority businesses to come and locate in Bowie. We do have several here and who are doing very well, so we want to continue that, and Bowie State University serves as a great, I don't want to say pipeline, but a great resource for that particular thing. So that's one piece. Also want to encourage, in regards to businesses, partnerships with the city, with our Economic Development Corporation in the county, employ Prince George's, and our own Chamber of Commerce. So we have those as resources as well to partner with so we don't have to be redundant and spend money elsewhere. We can use our own county resources. Also wanted to mention that South Lake, in addition, I love the recommendation about marketing the city as an athletic recreation tourist hub. And South Lake is going to have a large sports center there. So that is going to be a great draw to the city as a destination for athletics, in addition to Liberty Sports Park. So not only will we have, we'll have basketball there, we'll have football there, we'll have a whole host of sports, but we'll also have hotels, retail, shopping, grocery store anchor, and restaurants. So we want to make sure that that's kind of captured as well. So our residents understand that that's going to be a piece there. And I think that's all I had. Mayor Pro Tem made some of the comments that I wanted to make, but I appreciate all the hard work that you all are doing on this, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember, sports tourism, particularly youth sports tourism, is a huge growth business.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, these guys know, I spend every weekend on the road chasing a young soccer player around up and down the East Coast. It's a big business. And if you can capture a portion of that business, there's not a lot of competition on this side. You've got Soccerplex, which does lacrosse and soccer and some field hockey, but you could become a real sports tourism for youth sports, which brings those hotel rooms and everything else.
Correct. And Liberty Sports Park is coming online this year. So we'll have at least 6 of our fields active and bringing in we already have people registering and reserving fields at this time. So it's looking good. Thank you.
You have, Councilman.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Many of my questions and concerns were addressed by Mayor Pro Tem Boafo. And I don't have any questions for you, but what I will tell you, it did spark some thoughts that I had, and of which I was wanting to direct towards staff, if you could provide some of the answers. One, what are we, at the Bowie Town Center, what are we looking at have we heard anything back regarding the Sears building and the development of the apartments that are likely to come in there? Because as they were discussing the walkable communities and the traffic flowing pattern there at the Bowie Town Center, it began just charged some thoughts that I had about the status of that, if anyone could speak to that.
We don't have any new information at the city. As you may be aware, Seritage, who owns the Sears property, has gone through a number of reorganizations. I talk about every 3 weeks with the current project lead. He's based in Los Angeles. And they have the project in their hopper of things they're working on, but have not come up with any new timeline. We are expecting an update from them upon their return from this month's major retail gathering in Las Vegas.
Yes.
At which time I think they're scouting out some potential partners there.
Okay.
So I'm hopeful that my next conversation with them will reveal some additional details. But we have nothing new now.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'll await for that information. Thank you, Mr. King. And then lastly, I was looking through this as I see the budget recommended items that you would recommend investing into, such as tenant build-out assistance. I do believe that would be, definitely a great tool to attract businesses to Bowie, so could support such of that, as well as employee assistance and when buying and purchasing homes in the community. We definitely want to see people invest in the community to where they're living. So I could get behind those as well. I'm really impressed and pleased with this presentation this evening, and I want to thank my colleagues for supporting getting this done. Economic development is very important in our community, that we have a thriving community. As you mentioned, Bowie is pretty much the jewel of Prince George's County, and we've maintained that status for quite some time, and I'd like to see us continue to have that as we move forward. Again, thank you for coming out this evening, and thank you, staff.
Thank you. Councilman Dufour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. First of all, thank you all for your good works on this. A couple of things I want to comment on, and others that just ask a question, get some insights from you. The first is on placemaking. I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's, I think, a great opportunity to improve the quality of life and services for not just the people who may end up coming into that community if it's developed right around there, but also gives a destination for our local residents. And I think that there's some real value add there. One of the things that there was made mention of was incentives for business relocation. I had a question in terms of what you've seen elsewhere. One of the ideas I had about this sort of thing was instead of providing incentives for business relocation, instead make those incentives to the employees that we could have come and work and live here, specifically in the form perhaps of a tax rebate for anybody for, say, for example, maybe the first year's taxes on your home. If you're, say, your XYZ company and you relocate to Bowie, well then I'm not going to give you anything. You're doing well enough on your own. But you know what? All your employees could benefit from a tax break for relocating to the city. They could be right here in the community. So it also, I think, adds a little bit of a stickiness in terms of them not leaving when the period is up for perhaps some incentive. Have you seen or heard of any of this type of program before?
There are things that you can explore. There's limitations under state tax law and what you can do and what you can rebate and what you have local control over without having to go through state legislation. So it's worth exploring. I think most of what we see are the Live Near Your Work programs because the state heavily subsidized those, and it's less money coming out of local government. Obviously, when we're talking about attracting business, we're talking about using every tool that you can come up with, and the most cost-effective way to really attract a business is to have an existing business grow. So finding ways to work with those existing businesses that could spin off and create a second or third or a fourth business, particularly in the retail world, is a good investment. We can explore. I mean, I can certainly get back to you on other programs. I can't think of anything that does I mean, there are incentives around the state for personal property tax rebates on retail. I don't know of any income tax rebates that exist.
Well, this would be more for a property tax for city residents, for that aspect only. That's under our purview. I'm not sure if there are limitations.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything that exists. I'll certainly do some quick study and let you know. I'll respond back to the council. But I can't think of anything like that. It's certainly innovative. And if I can find that it exists, I'll let you know. And if it doesn't, it's something you could take up with the legislature.
Okay. The other item is, I was flipping through it, I was looking at the report, which I think you did a nice job on. It's difficult for me to discern the bottom line, the effect on the bottom line for the city. For me, I see, for example, the placemaking aspect. I think it's certainly beneficial to the purveyor, the owner of that property, but I think it's also good for the community, brings people in, and I think that's quality of life. It attracts and improves things. The athletic tourism hub, I see that as somewhat beneficial, but the direct benefits to us are pretty remote. I mean, the amount of tax revenue I get on a hotel room is not a lot. I'm sorry? Okay. But some of these things, there's some value add. The question is, how much bottom line value is there, and how can I measure that to see which of these things I should perhaps prioritize? For example, if it makes sense to do something perhaps it makes more sense to do something on the athletic tourism than it does on some other aspect, or vice versa. Do you have any indication here as to kind of that payoff?
So, some are harder to quantify than others. Like placemaking may not look like it adds to the bottom line, but if it makes it a more livable, walkable, desirable community that people want to stay in and spend all their money in, then you benefit in different ways. So some of it is harder to quantify. Our economist here probably has a very different answer and could dig down. But I think you have to keep in mind that some of these are long-term strategies to help grow the community and your tax base in other ways. So these investments may not be something like the sports tourism, may not be something that you benefit from each hotel room, but you certainly benefit from having an extra 10 or 20,000 people roll through and dine in your restaurants and go into your small businesses and support the town center and go into Old Town. And those are things that are harder to quantify, but Richard can do it because he actually does these studies for a living, and he can tell you exactly how much each one of those people contributes to the local community, and it's significant. But I think you're looking at it a little bit differently, and you're trying to figure out how each one of these affects the bottom line, and I think it's hard to answer for every one of them because some of them are really long-term. Do you have anything you want to?
I think the goal is to expand the business base. The city has a relatively small level of jobs per resident, because it is a bedroom community. So the goal of the economic development strategy is to get more employers, to get you have space to be developed in the city. So the payoff comes by expanding the business base and the property taxes, hopefully income taxes paid by those residents and businesses. And it's hard, as Bill said, to quantify the differential impact between facade improvement and recommendation 2 and 5. But I think the goal is to expand the business base. By expanding the business base, you expand your tax base, and you have relatively less added to services than adding, residents. So I think that's where the fiscal return to the city comes from.
Okay, thank you. Another question is kind of a follow-up. I've been in the city for just under 30 years, which makes me a newcomer. My wife grew up here, and this is, a great place to live. Loved it since it settled. As longest place, of course, I've ever lived. But one of the things that was always the case was that it was a geographic issue, which is we're kind of in like a Bermuda Triangle, if you will, of the greater pulls around us, right? So we have Baltimore to the north, Washington, and of course Annapolis. And for many years, and certainly before I got here, those were the places you went to do certain things, so that there was, we were a bedroom community, and I'm trying to figure out how we make that transition over, and indeed if even our citizens are interested in that, in terms of transitioning to kind of a bedroom where people are going north, south, east, west, and turning it instead something that's more localized and where you see it being a geography destination of its own. Because I don't see a lot of people coming from Annapolis to here, or from Baltimore to here, Washington to here. Obviously, there are plenty of spots in between around us. How does a community change over with those kind of pulls, those other economic forces around?
I don't know that you do. I don't think that the intention is to change the quality of the community. You have a bedroom community. I think it's stabilizing your employment base and growing it. But I don't think anybody is, certainly in none of the conversations we had in the stakeholder interviews, nobody wants Bowie to change. It's more about the quality of life. You have a high quality of life. People complain that there weren't enough services to support that quality of life, so they're leaving constantly the city of Bowie to go elsewhere to do things, as you mentioned. Which one of those things can you attract to the community so people have to leave less frequently? What businesses can you attract where more people will want to live here to add to your really stable residential base? But I don't think in any of our conversations or any of our recommendations we're intimating that you should be looking at changing the way you are. Certainly having a different residential mix as you grow is helpful. You do have an aging demographic. It bears out in the data. What can you do to make it more attractive to people who want to start their family here and stay here? So those are the types of conversations that I think the council needs to be having over the next decade. But this is not an overnight, you're going to change. You are what you are, and you're celebrated for it. Nobody is suggesting that you change who the city of Bowie is today. It's more about updating the model to ensure that people want to continue to live here and it be the great community that it is.
If that's the case, then the presumption I would have is that the focus ought to be more on the services aspects than it is of the kind of commercial, business, corporate, trying to attract those, even like a government contractor type. If I'm staying more or less kind of true to where I am.
Well, I will tell you that's where we saw some opportunity, though. That's a real opportunity, and adding that certainly broadens your tax base significantly. Having those defense contractors that may want to come here will also, particularly if they introduce a Live Near Your Work program, may entice those people to live here. Your economy is better the more people who leave here every day and go to another jurisdiction to work. So if you have a couple of those and you broaden that base, again, this is not something, you don't have millions of square feet to be able to build dense industrial and commercial parks. It's not going to happen here. Your residents won't want it, you won't want it. But if you have opportunities to add to your office base, you have an educated population, creating more jobs for people that are here is something that I think would benefit your long-term economically.
And through creative, there's a changing dynamic in business location, and there is a quest for more density in the live, work, play environment, and for the city to develop that, live, work, play environment, as we talked about in the placemaking strategy, is what's going to be really necessary. I mean, if you talk about economic development nationally, the number 1 and 2 issues that businesses are looking at is workforce. And they're looking for a younger workforce. And they're looking for a technologically advanced workforce. And those workers are looking for a more live, work, play environment. And if you don't have it, it's harder to get the workers. If it's harder to get the workers, it's harder to get the companies. So this is, again, not changing Bowie, but maybe bringing more through placemaking, what's more demanded by your business base in the region, the city, the state.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any other questions from any other councilman?
I just wanted to say a big thank you. This was an incredibly thorough report. These were a lot of great recommendations. I really appreciate John Henry's pushing us to do this. Just a general comment, and this isn't anything that I don't think that's already been said. It's no secret that Bowie, like many other communities across the country, are wrestling with how to handle changes in our economy. I remember in the early 2000s when I was working with Senator Peters, and at the time everything was jobs in the economy. How do we get employers here? How do we get people working, especially post-recession? That was the name of the game. And then sometime in the 2010s, we saw a shift. And it doesn't matter what it was in Arundel County or Howard or here in Prince George's, the shift was, we're tired of all the damn new construction, we're tired of the traffic, we don't want to be Springfield or Bethesda or anywhere else. Frankly, as many of us have seen on this council in recent years, residents will gladly accept blight rather than modest new residential. Residents will gladly take higher taxes rather than suffer a handful of new neighborhoods getting built. Residents would rather lose opportunities than tolerate even a little bit of development. And, the business community and the EDC can look at us and say, well, that's insane. But we live in the political world where we're looking at, the math. And that math is really undeniable. And we're seeing it from all ages, we're seeing it from all races, we're seeing it from all political parties. This is not a one small minority group, telling us no. This is an entire town telling us no. The good news is that in recent years, we're beginning to see a little bit of a shift. I think, one, the areas around us have grown so much. I think people are getting adjusted to the fact that, man, Walt Chapel's really congested, but all my stores are there, so I guess I'll put up with the traffic, just like 301 and 197 and 450, so much is growing in this area. I think people kind of recognize that it's inevitable, and I'm starting to hear that more. I'm starting to hear, okay, this is inevitable. And that being said, it's really going to be on all of us to really work proactively with our residents to show them that we're not the enemy here. We are trying to hold the lantern as we go through this kind of dark cavern of a brave new world where we have to adapt if we plan on surviving, and we need to do this in a way that's going to be their long-term interests. Oftentimes, they're not going to see it that way. They are going to think that you are just a bunch of suits, from a different town trying to tell them how to destroy the community that they view with very rose-colored lenses, right? So it's really going to be on us to make sure that we are on the same page, that we are working proactively and aggressively and relentlessly with residents and being really upfront with them. I can't tell you how much damage has been done by generations of lawmakers who have made bad, dumb, unachievable promises. I can't tell you how much that's hurt and how little trust there is in the state of Maryland and in the county because of it. People don't trust us with their tax money. They don't trust us with land use, and frankly, we don't deserve that trust. So these are all things that we need to work on. I like this plan. I'm sold. I'm on board with 80% of it. But I think we just need to be very sober and realistic about the job ahead, because it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Any other council members? Hearing none. Thank you so very much for your presentation. At this time, I would like to open up to the public hearing.
Yes, Mayor, you have 2 residents signed up to speak.
Okay. I think the first person, and my apologies if I mess up the enunciation, is John Edson.
People used to say John, and then there's a long pause. Thank you, Mayor.
Please,
I'm the chairman of the IT committee, and I want to thank the mayor, council members, and the staff for giving us this opportunity. We've taken a chance, some time to look through the Economic Development Committee, the Economic Development Report, and we'd like an opportunity sometime in the near future to sit down and talk with the Economic Development Committee. We think there are many places where the council's previous work in working on ending the digital divide and providing open, secure, affordable digital communications both for the city and for its residents intersect at several points in this plan. Access to digital communications is as much a necessity as power, water, and waste management. The city's review of the draft economic development strategy should include evaluating its impact on affordable access to data services, building design, energy use, as well as waste and water management. The city may not enjoy express authority to require certain standards that the draft recommends, but as stated in the draft economic strategy, the city's stated opinion on projects does carry weight with the Prince George's County Planning Board. What you cannot require, you should be able to insist on, particularly as these projects go forward. As economic development opportunities are considered, the city should insist developers assure residences and businesses have an affordable choice of data providers. The IT committee has heard complaints. We have heard complaints from residents that have access to only one internet provider and therefore no opportunity to bargain for lower prices or better service. This is particularly true when we talk about mixed-use development and rental properties, where the cost of installing new fiber optic or coaxial cable lines across a landlord's property is a barrier to new providers. In a related area of city interest, this restricted access across private property also applies to providing electric power to vehicle charging stations. The city's Dig Once policy, as passed, should apply to all development and include pre-installed spare facilities from the public right-of-way, across private property, and into each building. This assures that more than one internet provider could be available to tenants throughout the useful life of the building. It is a benefit of the information age that there are no natural monopolies for data until you get to a landlord's property. The incremental cost of spare fiber conduit runs about 10 cents to 50 cents a foot. Cutting a new trench is anywhere from $35 to $85 a foot. The time to have the facilities available is when the buildings are being constructed, not later when someone has to come along with a backhoe or a ditch witch and tear the place up. That's as true for private property as it is for our streets. The last mile of digital access should not be a monopoly, nor should it be ugly. The plan mentions commercial facade improvements. The draft economic development strategy recommends the city establish a commercial facade improvement program. This provides the city with an opportunity to address both existing buildings as well as new development. As stated earlier, residences and businesses need choices from multiple data providers. In addition to underground service, these choices will include light pole or rooftop access for wireless data antennas, satellite and microwave dishes, or free space optical data transmission. The city's existing small wireless facility design guidelines, when applied to a commercial facade improvement program, will provide benefits that support the recommendations in the draft plan. It will allow access to multiple sources of data communication, and not just underground, but on rooftops. It will see that antennas do not become ugly eyesores. And when architectural screening is used to camouflage roof antennas, these screens do double duty as fences and improve worker safety. Just as in this building, when these screens are put up around the air conditioning and air handling units on the roof. It's not necessary for people to tie off while they go up to do routine maintenance. A copy of relevant City Council acts and illustrations from previous presentations are in your work package, and I'll be happy to talk about them at any time. we would welcome an opportunity to talk to the Economic Development Committee. And on behalf of the IT Committee, I want to thank you for your attention, and it is an honor to support our council and our city. Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Verna Teasdale. Good evening.
And good evening to each of you and to the city manager and staff. I'm here tonight for two reasons. First, to thank you for your support for the second Old Bowie Celebrates Festival, which will be October 1st. And this year the festival will be even more interesting and fun because Old Bowie Celebrates and the International Festival have been blended to celebrate cultures through arts and heritage. The second is to acknowledge the economic development strategy and action plan. And I kind of think that these people probably, once they got into it, enjoyed doing that project when they found out that people like Bowie. And the other thing, there was nothing to fix. So you had the opportunity to simply make good recommendations. And so some of those recommendations, I want to focus specifically on Old Bowie. There were three. One of them was to create a retail attraction fund to encourage stores to locate in Old Town Bowie. The second was to assess the property in Old Town Bowie, and the third, to create a designated area for small and local businesses. All good ideas, but shoppers need inviting reasons to visit Old Town Bowie. You can give them those reasons by establishing the one unique attraction that Bowie does not have: an arts, heritage, and entertainment district. With an entertainment district, businesses will come, and so will the shoppers. Festivals past and present have proved that if people are given an interesting reason to come to Old Town Bowie, they will come. To keep people coming requires more than a once-a-year festival. An arts and heritage entertainment district would provide regular entertainment, a place for entertainers to stay, street art, the complete heritage trail, and facilities for visitors. For over 2 years, the Old Bowie Arts and Heritage Steering Committee, a dedicated group of citizens, have worked to make the festival a reality and to develop Old Town Bowie into an arts and heritage entertainment district. Now it's time for the council to take the next step. Establish the Retail Attraction Fund and authorize an assessment of property in Old Town Bowie with the intent of repurposing buildings to establish a location for regular entertainment, workshops, and galleries. By establishing Old Town Bowie as an arts, heritage, and entertainment area, you can turn Old Town Bowie into a major economic engine. Please give Old Town Bowie the attention it needs and deserves so that it can benefit all of Bowie. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, and at this time, I will declare the public hearing closed. Council members, any comments? Open the floor.
Just one. Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to thank Verna and John for coming out tonight, and Verna in particular. You get a lot of credit for your tremendous work in Old Bowie. You and Karen Parker and your team absolutely carried that festival and made it a success. I am super psyched that you're joining up with the International Festival because they always had a ton of food and not enough people to eat it. And you guys had a ton of people, not enough food. So this is going to be beautiful, and I'm super psyched for that marriage, and I look forward to that festival. Thank you.
Good, we're now open for action, if we choose to. But we can accept the economic strategy.
Yeah, the strategy.
Okay.
And forward it to, that's what I'm asking, what do we want to do at this point?
Hold off on it yeah. We don't have to take action. Okay, anyways. Yeah, sorry.
But we need to discuss.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to have this topic eligible again for public hearing during our second meeting in June to allow more residents to have time to digest the document as is. And then following the second meeting in June, forwarding it to the Economic Development Committee.
Okay.
I'll second that motion, but can I ask for a quick amendment?
Yeah.
Or maybe just a point of clarification for staff. Would it be possible for staff to digest this report in a quick bullet point format? I see the city manager shaking his head, so I'm going to turn to John Henry King. Is it possible to digest this report into a couple quick highlights, something that we could put out through city communications to residents so that they don't have to read through 109 pages?
I will certainly ask our communications director if she can do it, but I feel this is pretty much in that format now.
It's already in the format. You can use.
So we're happy to just use this existing thing?
Yeah, just use these slides.
There, and
Perfect.
please keep in mind, this material is already out to the public. What I'm hearing you say is you'd like us to boost the effort up for higher visibility once again, and we'll do that.
Thank you. It's a great question.
Okay, I'm fine with just the slides then. Never mind.
Well, we would hate to be in a position to rewrite this document and get something wrong. It's not our expertise, but I think we should just put this out.
I have entertained the motion.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second, and the motion is that we simply.
On your original, he's saying on this original. And Ingrid is asked seconding Adrian, I'm sorry, the Mayor Pro Tem's original.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I was just making sure that
We'll make sure I understand what the action would be.
That's why I was going to go to the city clerk.
What I've heard then is that you want to leave the document out in its current format until the second work session in June, and at that time, forward it to the Economic Development Committee. Is that correct?
No. Correct. No, that is correct.
Oh, yeah. After the public buys into it.
Correct.
Yes.
The only piece you're missing is a renewed effort to reboost this so that people can see it in high visibility.
And city manager, so what I'm hearing from, and what the intent, let me say this. We've had it's been moved and properly seconded, and now we're in discussion. Okay, so everybody's on the same page. Okay. The discussion is basically saying, all we're going to do at this time with this motion is we're simply going to give the public a little more time to look at the plan, and then move this to our next council meeting where we will bring it back up for action. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion from anyone? All right, hearing none at this point, it's been moved and properly seconded, and at this time I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. I would like to have a moment of personal privilege. Council member M. Dubamadu was trying to say something earlier, and I didn't hear her, and I thought I heard her, and I kind of talked over her. And I really would like for her, and it was on a previous issue, and so as a point of personal privilege, I'd like to afford her the opportunity to speak regarding that at this time, if she would like to. Well, In that case, I will say to city staff, one of the concerns was when it came to the budget, Councilmember Ndamadu, I'm killing her name, really wanted to make sure that we prioritize, because she had some real strong concerns about the stop signs in her district and how they are, and that we really prioritize those before there's some major accident there. So I would just simply ask of our staff to make sure that we make that a priority, that we look at those. And I know you prioritize them and you do your thing, but if you could give some special attention to some of those in her district, since I cut her off and didn't allow her to say that earlier, I really would like that to go into the record and have that presented to you, Mr. City Manager.
Well, we'll do that, sir. We got you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to our next item, which is the Climate Action Plan implementation. I will turn it over to staff.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Joe Minert, the Planning Director, here to introduce this item. With me this evening is our Sustainability Planner, Ms. Ashley Diaz, who's going to give a brief overview of where we are with the project. The council approved the Climate Action Plan in 2020, and we are now in the process of implementing that plan, and Ashley will provide you with the details of the implementation. So I'll turn it over to Ashley.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Could you speak up just a little bit for us?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. I will try to make this short and sweet following up that wonderful presentation, so I'm going to run through this quickly for you. Let's just jump in. I want to do a quick refresher, though, about the actual Climate Action Plan. It was approved by you all in 2020, and it was done in-house by the Green Team and the EAC. And there are 4 major sectors: the city government, residential, commercial, and intergovernmental. There's also a communications piece to it, because of course we feel communications transcends everything, but we don't have a communications part in this plan because of the rebranding effort and everything. So the Climate Action Plan is written pretty broad, but it's also very relevant. It's in line with the county Climate Action Plan, with COG, etc. And the overall goal is to reduce citywide emissions by 50% by the year 2030. Okay, this is another refresher, and I know there's kind of a lot going on, so just bear with me and I'll explain it quickly. I think it's important to set the stage with it. So solar radiation leaves the sun and comes to Earth. Solar radiation, aka heat. Some of it is absorbed into the Earth, mainly by the oceans, and some of it is reflected, often into space. However, when it's trying to leave, it gets bogged down in our atmosphere, because our atmosphere is littered with greenhouse gases, and that comes from human activities that mainly burn fuel, but different things that cause emissions, cause the greenhouse gases that cause the warming. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that. So now that all the refreshers are out of the way and the science lessons, we can get into the actual creation of the implementation plan, which was also done in-house, Green Team, EAC, myself, planning staff, and the staff sustainability team, of course. So this is basically a breakdown of what is in the plan. And if you look at the first row, that's what's in the Climate Action Plan, the original one. So you have the action items and then the sectors. What we've done here is we've added objectives, metrics, and next steps. And the next steps, you know, they talk about things like appropriate staff and timelines and budget implications. So we really get much more specific in this plan. And I've just kind of put, you know, the numbers are just how many things we have to do in each category, and I highlighted where we essentially have the most work to do, and it's, you know, communicating with residents. Please do not try to read this. This is just to show you how the plan is set up. So if you were looking at the plan, each sector has tables like this. So it starts with the action item and the action area. That's straight out of the Climate Action Plan, but you can see we've added the objectives and the metrics, and then we have a separate table also with the next steps, with the, again, appropriate staff and things like that. And one thing I just wanted to touch on, because I think some people were confused about it, is that not every objective has a metric right now, and some objectives have multiple metrics. So it's not always going to be a one-for-one. So if you're reading and it doesn't line up, that's most likely why. Just wanted to clarify that. So the actual public comments, we had the public comment period open for the entire month of April this year. And when you went to the website, residents could read the plan, they could use the fillable form, or they could email me, which some people did, just stream of consciousness, all their thoughts, which was great. And of course, we advertised it in all the normal places that we normally would. These are just a few of the comments, and they're taken verbatim, so I just tried to highlight some of the most important parts. You can see the one comment under city government references EVs and support for EVs. And then, we had another one that talked about lighter colored roofs, which is something I've never thought about. So we did get some really good suggestions and a lot of positive feedback. In terms of next steps, the first would be approval from you all of the implementation plan. That would be lovely. And just continuing on, leading the way with EVs the way we already have, looking at our own fleet, communicating with residents, and creating a fuel reduction plan. And just, looking forward to the future, we will need a new plan in 2025, because even though we have until 2030 to meet our goal, the actions are only set to take place between 2020 and 2025. So just wanted to put that there. And just to end on a positive note, obviously the City of Bowie is doing amazing things in the sustainability field, and we just want to keep it up because we're leaders, right? So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions? Council. Councilmember.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got one question. Ashley, thank you for the presentation and for the report. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. Two things. One with municipal composting. So Greenbelt and College Park and another town in our area are starting to implement or expand some composting programs. We're in this upcoming budget, courtesy of Councilman Dufour, taking on composting as well. For curbside composting, it recently came to my attention that there are some potential cost savings involved, that for composting pickup, which is something that would be in the future, not imminent in Bowie, it's possible to use the same trucks that currently do yard waste. They could also collect compost waste. This was apparently something that a lot of towns were not aware of until recently. Is that correct?
Yes, and the tipping fees are significantly lower. So
what's the difference in the tipping fees?
It's $25 a ton for yard waste and $45 for food waste, as compare that to $70 per ton of regular trash. So 70
for regular trash, 45 for yard waste.
For food waste.
Food waste, 25 for yard waste.
And I actually just reached out to the county today because of what you referenced, municipalities combining them and bringing them together. And there's a chance for cost savings there, so I will have that number shortly.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. The other thing, I understand that the county is taking up a bill, CB 014-2022, related to disposable food serviceware. Have we had any communication, either at the staff level or through the Green Team or the EAC, about this particular legislation and whether they had any thoughts on it?
No, not that I know of. I have had conversations with Martha Ainsworth, and I've been informed about it, but none other that I know of.
Dr. Ainsworth is on the case. Okay, good to know.
Yes.
I might suggest that this is something that council should take a look at our next upcoming meeting to see if we have any interest in taking a position on this issue. As we are learning from recent reports, our existing methods of recycling are universally adopted and achieving exceedingly little because of the nature of what people are throwing in their recycling bins and who's actually buying it. And the reality is that in the long term, if we don't want to all be composed of some amount of microplastics down to our DNA level, it's going to be really important that we simply eliminate plastics entirely and continue to support innovation that will help accelerate that process. So just me opining, but something that we might want to take up at a near future meeting to discuss. That's all I have. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from the council? Councilman Wolfe?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick comments. First of all, you know, for me, I'm pleased to see the continuing efforts on EVs. You know, I think it's a great thing that we can do that has a tangible benefit locally, as well as, you know, in the macro realm as well. Echo Councilman Estev's commentary about the composting and seeing what can be done there. I think that's fantastic. And I guess the final thing is, in terms of plastics and other areas that we find ourselves, you know, whether it's bags or, you know, the plasticware or things like that, I do think whatever we do has to be done in concert with a broader governing authority, because I find that if we find ourselves in a position where we're trying to say, do something on the plastic bag issues, it's such a small little area, people don't even know if it's, you know, if they're in or out, if it applies to them. It's very difficult for a geographic area in our size to have kind of that effect on retailers and the like. But I do think that, you know, certainly at the county level and of course at the state level, there'd be more success in that area. So I do think whatever we can do to focus on that level and supporting those endeavors, I think that's a great opportunity for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from council? Hearing none at this time, I will open the public hearing.
There are no residents signed up to speak, Mayor.
With no comments, then we will close the public hearing at this time. And we are open for action if council chooses.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the Climate Action Implementation Plan.
And I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye.
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 Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. We will now move to the adoption of Resolution R20-22 establishing the Bowie Racetrack Task Force. I will turn over to Mr. Minor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening again, council members. I'm Joe Minor, the City Planning Director. What you have before you this evening is a draft resolution R2022 establishing the Bowie Racetrack Property Task Force. As council is aware, there has been a steering committee convened made up of representatives from the City Council, city staff, and the Bowie State University staff and representatives. That group has met several times and came to a conclusion recently that it would behoove us to have a council-appointed task force that would be representative of the broader community, the local homeowners associations in the area bordering the racetrack, city committees as well, that such as the Recreation Committee and the environmental committees. And so what we've done is we prepared this draft resolution that outlines the structure for the Bowie Racetrack Property Task Force. As I mentioned, there would be Executive Steering Committee, would be a Community Engagement Subcommittee, which would be made up of those resident representatives that I mentioned, also City Committee Subcommittee, which would deal with those other committees that I mentioned, as well as an internal subcommittee, which would bring information to us from the Bowie State University community. So those would be the four components of the structure of the task force. There's also a recommended charge that we've included on page 2 of the resolution for the task force that would have a limited focus looking at the results of the environmental investigations of the site, developing a list of the desired uses and anticipated space needs from each entity meaning Bowie State University and the city. Also developing a concept plan for the activation of the property, including programmatic elements. And then finally, determining a methodology for renewed community engagement efforts. And that would be a primary purpose of the task force, to actually solicit public input and comments as we move forward towards the preparation of a preliminary recreation master plan. We've included also a timeline, which is attached, roughly a 10-month period for the task force to conduct its work, and we would anticipate that they would conclude and provide recommendations to the council by no later than July 1st of next year. And that's an overview of the resolution that's before you. Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And at this point, it's up to the council as to what you want to do.
At this point, I would like to just make a couple of comments. First, to Councilmember Harrison, thank you for the time and effort that's been put into that. Joe, to you and the rest of the staff, just so that everyone understands, this was a effort that we had many representatives from the city in, as well as Bowie State. And we had some folks who have been very successful at putting together some task force to really give us some guidance on how we should put this together, that we can make sure that all the stakeholders are addressed. So I just want to say thank you for that. And on that note, I will leave it open to council members. Any questions at this time? Council member C.
I have a couple. First of all, thank you, staff, for doing this. This is essential. Given we promised the state we wouldn't be caught with our pants down when we inherited this property. This is us making sure the belt's nice and tight. Three things. One, I'm a little bit concerned about the subcommittee model, and maybe you can alleviate my concerns. My biggest want out of this process is consensus. And with the subcommittee approach, I'm a little bit concerned that we are siloing three separate stakeholder groups when we really need them to be coming together and ironing out differences now. Because we basically, I think, know the differences between the stakeholders groups. The HOAs don't want anything. They want grass, maybe a bench if we're feeling ambitious. That's not much of an exaggeration. The university's going to want more recreational uses, right? They're going to want more stuff there, more programming. And then, the other stakeholders groups are going to have other ones as well. So can you maybe walk me through how the decision-making process on this committee is going to work to avoid three conflicting recommendations with the steering committee just kind of picking one? How collaborative is this going to be?
Well, I think the most important and continuous part of this process would be the continuing meetings of the executive steering committee, which would be the current group that's meeting, the Bowie State staff, the city staff, as well as a member from the Park and Planning Commission, because they're a very important stakeholder. They own land on either side of the property. So this group would continue to meet regularly and coordinate, provide the oversight, but then we would draw upon the expertise of the subcommittees to design a public process. And if you happen to notice on the timeline document on page 4, there are a few activities that would begin immediately, determining the methodology for the renewed community engagement effort, and also beginning renewed community outreach on the site. These would be over the next 6 months, and so it would be a major task for the steering committee to work with the subcommittees to create a public input process, stakeholder meetings. We might hold a community charrette, do a community survey. We've had discussions like this, but we really need to move into something more concrete. So that's the intent right now, and I think the system does provide for members. We have six members total of the engagement subcommittee, which would be 3 of the homeowners and community associations representatives, as well as 3 from citywide community groups. So you would have 6 individuals that would routinely communicate with the steering committee, and also the same thing with the city committees. We would have 6 representatives, I guess 2 from the Recreation Committee, 2 from the Environmental Advisory Committee, and 2 from the Green Team Committee, that we would draw upon and integrate with these steering committee discussions. So I think it's a fairly integrated process. We do have, representatives of the recreation community, the environmental community, the university community, as well as the homeowners. And one of our goals, as I said, with the timeline is to work with these people to develop the plan for community engagement over the next 6 months.
So maybe I'm borrowing worry unnecessarily, but given the stakes of this and kind of the long-term implications, I want to make sure we get this right. My concern is just making sure, we kind of see how these decision-making processes work in the committee process. And my concern is just making sure we don't have separate stakeholders in these different subcommittees coming up with different recommendations that are all going to be a little bit different and are going to conflict in some ways, and then the steering committee just kind of choosing sides, basically. I'd feel much more comfortable knowing, for instance, as an example, that Bowie State's representatives are physically in a room at the table with the HOAs to, forgive the phrase, horse trade directly, right? Borrow ideas, decide what's vetoable, what's not, what people can live with, what they can't. And again, I'm just hoping this is more collaborative. So the executive committee is not just, again, picking between kind of conflicting desires, but the actual stakeholders themselves are talking through amongst themselves the issues and deciding what they can and can't live with. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense, and we would certainly pay attention to that aspect as we're moving ahead.
Okay, I appreciate that. Because we're only going to have a year from the time we create this to the time we appoint it to the time they present a recommendation, and we know how quickly that 12 months is going to go by. Very quickly is the answer to that rhetorical question. So I just really want to make sure we're on top of this. I really appreciate the work that's gone into this. I really want us to operate in good faith. I think this is a very representative group. I'm just really interested in making sure this is a good collaborative decision-making process. So, thank you.
Councilmember Steph, can I just respond to your concerns? As the mayor and I participated in the group, of course, we also had the same concern. We all talked about it, and we wanted to make sure that all the subcommittees would come into the executive committee. We just didn't want a huge group of people, in this decision-making process. So we put the committees in their own entity, but they would also have a charge. So it's not like they would be just kind of acting on their own accord. They would have a charge from the executive committee as to what their responsibility would be, and we would all be working together. So it's not like there wouldn't be members of the executive committee attending one of the committee meetings. So it would be very, very collaborative.
On the executive committee, could there be a representative from each of the subcommittees? Is that the plan?
That's the plan, yes.
Okay.
So there will be someone from each subcommittee reporting into the executive committee.
Okay.
Yes.
So in the document it says, and maybe this is the source of my confusion, on the document it says the executive committee will be made up of representatives from the following groups: the City of Bowie, City Council specifically, staff, Bowie State staff, Maryland National Capital Park and Planning, sub-consultants. Am I to understand that in addition to those 5, there will also be a representative from each of the subcommittees?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we spell that out in this document?
If you want.
Please.
Well, our staff's working for it, the mayor and Ms. Harrison.
Okay, great.
We'll put whatever you want in the
Well,
document.
if just verbal direction and nodding from us is good enough, then let's go with that. But I just want to make sure that that's clear in this process, because this is exactly the kind of situation where, we could end up, in a political tit for tat, and I don't want that. So I think we're all unanimous, and I appreciate Councilmember Harrison and the mayor's comments on this. So thank you.
Sounds good, Joe. You got that? We'll put that in. Okay, great. All right. Any other questions from council? Hearing none, I will open this to public hearing.
There's no one signed up to speak this evening, Mayor.
Okay, hearing that, we will now close the public hearing. It's a formality. If we could, I would entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move to adopt Resolution R-20-22, establishing the Bowie Racetrack Task Force.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. At this point, I'd like to say thank you, everyone.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Motion carries. Hey, I'd like to just say again, thank you to the council, to the viewers, the citizens of Bowie, for all your support and all you do. I'd like to thank staff again for all you do. We appreciate it. And again, I ask that everyone please stay safe. We know that, let's be very candid, we're still in the legs of a pandemic. There's been some new recommendations. The infection rate is going up, so everyone please be safe. And on that note, thank you and have a good night, and please be safe. Good night.